Call me by my name if you're going to say that. Field. Matt.
You're in the 06010 Focus Fantasy Focus.
Games begin tonight. That's right. Week 4 begins. This is Thursday, September 26th. Field Mike and Stephania getting you ready for the much anticipated, cannot wait for its game, the matchup of the week, at least amongst games played on Thursday. Eagles and Packers in Green Bay. There should be fun. Mike, let me ask. Yeah,
guys,
right.
hold on. Come on. I am not your freaking mother. You can turn your own microphones on. Oh my goodness, Field,
I haven't talked yet. Purpose.
I
haven't
talked yet. I just want you to know I appreciate you, Field, and you always come ready and prepared. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Daniel. What are we talking about again today on the show?
Anything that you want at this point.
Okay,
I don't even care.
So we have a big night tonight, though. Huge night. Packers, Eagles in Green Bay. This features two of our favorite people that are part of this show, Mike, Eagles, Kyle, Packers. These two facing off against each other. And we'll make our picks can pick 'em pick in just a little bit. But before we get to that, there needs to be something. We said this yesterday. There needs to be some sort of wager between these two intelligent, thoughtful, insightful. You know, I'm lying on all that part. These two people that happen to love certain football teams that are playing tonight.
But here's the thing. If I make a side bet like this, I generally want food involved because I love food, right? But Kyle doesn't eat food, so what are we supposed to do?
Kyle's not a bunny rabbit. He does eat food. He just
all right, so a bowl of cereal for one piece.
I was going to say, how many sushi dinner or how many cereal boxes equal one sushi dinner?
1/8 of a California roll? Like, is that what I
you
get?
get one piece of sushi in exchange for one box of Lucky Charms or whatever.
This would be a very interesting trip to the.
I don't think I should lose because Kyle doesn't eat, right? Like, I should be able to pick a filet mignon, and he picks Cheerios.
I think the loser has to treat the bowling next time we go out.
Okay. I mean, that's what, $3? Done.
What do you think a box of cereal is?
Touche.
There we have it.
Okay.
Lamest bet ever.
All right.
I know it might be. That's
fine.
terrible.
Listen, I eat Cheerios for breakfast, so it could be that.
Okay.
Let's just get to the
Let's
final.
please.
Save our time.
Fantasy news from the National Football League. This is the instant replay.
That was definitely the worst bet ever.
The best part,
awful.
That was the worst bet.
The best part is both of you are going to be laying in bed tonight. You're going to be like, oh, I should have said this kind of a thing.
I could.
Oh, I should have said
Think about this. This is so simple. Here's what you do. First of all, no one's going to actually follow through with paying off on the bet or hold you accountable if you don't. What you do is you think about your city. Mike, the great city of Philadelphia, passionate. And let's go to the cliches, right? Cheesesteaks, even though not everybody from Philadelphia is obsessed with cheesesteaks. It's not like you have one every week for dinner. Kyle, Green Bay, Packers, cheese curds.
I think
make some sort of cheese-based bet. This is not that hard. Not that hard.
Cheese and beer.
I challenge you. The next time the Packers play the Eagles on Thursday Night Football, which will probably be in 2037 when we're all, who knows, retired. I hope. We can make a much better bet.
All right.
That's my challenge.
We have 8 years to figure this out.
Sure, got it.
All right, let's get to some news. And we begin with what we talked about yesterday. It's now official, so we'll just update you on what we said yesterday. Melvin Gordon is returning to the Packers. Not to the Packers. Well,
well, maybe.
It's your fault. And your fault, too.
That's breaking news.
Melvin Gordon is returning to the Chargers.
Are you breaking trade news?
That are in Los Angeles. It's official. Adam Schefter reported he's going to be there today. After reporting yesterday, it was going to happen soon. Soon now means today. So we now know that Melvin Gordon will be back in the building today. Not expected to play on Sunday, but he presumably would play next week when they play the Denver Broncos. Just to sort of reiterate, if you have Austin Ekeler, Mike, with even more context now, your strategy would be what?
I think you have to hold unless for some reason there's someone in your league that's thinking Ekeler's too good, he's too dominant. I'm gonna ride it out. I think he's still gonna be a top 10 fantasy running back. If there's someone that feels that way, you should trade them for a pretty good RB2 or a wide receiver 3 or a fringe wide receiver 2, we'll say. Otherwise, hold tight because Ekeler, again, he'll still have standalone value. He still has a ton of value this week as a strong RB1. But I think your best case scenario here is just to hold on to him. He's still a very good handcuff and has some standalone value.
I would 100% hold on to Austin Ekeler if you have Melvin Gordon and you're planning on using him. Because we talk about this all the time with guys who've been out of football, haven't done anything football-like, and all of a sudden he's going to be inserted into contact football in games. There's an injury risk there that goes up. That's why we see more injuries in the preseason. I would not be getting rid of Austin Ekeler if I was counting on Melvin Gordon as a starter.
Yeah, well, certainly Ekeler probably is. He is clearly the best handcuff running back in the NFL as things stand. And I see the screen. Do we think Ekeler will be a flex? I was trying to ask. You want to ask a question from Keith? That's why you're pointing over there.
I just had a question.
Yes.
Stephania, you said hang on to Austin Ekeler if you also roster Melvin Gordon.
Yes.
How about if you don't and you just have Ekeler? That's the bigger question, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think as Mike said, he still has standalone value. So it depends. If I would default to Mike's answer, because if somebody was going to give me huge value for Austin Ekeler, somebody that I could insert that could play right away, that I thought was going to be a better performer because they wanted to get him as a handcuff to Melvin Gordon, then I would make that trade. I think you have the leverage by having Ekeler, actually.
Well, here's
that situation.
You probably, I don't know. I get this. Well, I'm sure some people have both Melvin Gordon and Austin Ekeler, but given the fact that as of yesterday, Melvin Gordon was available in 89% of leagues on ESPN.com, may not be that many people. What I will say is that
I haven't
even rostered in 89% of leagues.
Rostered 89%. I read a tweet wrong then. I take that back. He was available in only 11% of leagues.
But still, 11% of leagues is crazy.
11% of leagues. Anyway, so it's possible there are a lot of people that actually did have both of them. In that case, you clearly are hanging on to them. If you don't have Melvin Gordon, I think the hope is probably this. Mike said it first. You fish for a trade if you can get something really good for 1 week, perhaps find a desperate team that needs a win. 2 is that you hope that maybe even in Melvin Gordon's return in the subsequent 2 to 3 weeks that they're splitting time enough that Ekeler can be a flex play for you for, let's say, another 2 to 3 weeks on top of this week 1 or one more week of being an RB1 plus be the ultimate handcuff in case something happens to Melvin Gordon going forward.
I don't see a scenario where Melvin Gordon comes in and dominates the work. I just
in time, yes.
In time, but I think it's going to be multiple weeks before that happens.
All right, so let's get to other news. And Stephania, a lot of injuries are starting to trickle in during the week. It is only Thursday, so we've had just 1 day of practice for the teams that are playing on Sunday. But give us a few that we should be monitoring as we get closer to Sunday.
Right. This is what I use Wednesday for, is like who's on my radar now of what I want to see they do the rest of the week. So I'm just going to rattle off a few names, some of whom were there since last week. So starting with Damian Williams, did not practice again on Wednesday, so he's done nothing since he had the bone contusion that kept him out of last week's game. T.Y. Hilton did not practice on Wednesday with the bruised quad, which obviously he aggravated last week and left the game early. Devin Singletary did not practice again with the hamstring injury, so watch what he does the rest of this week. Now, here's a couple other things that are newer that we should be keeping an eye on. Amari Cooper left practice early because of his right ankle, ended up going for an MRI, reportedly precautionary, but we still want to wait and see what he does after this. This is something new for him. It's not the heel issue that he's been on the injury report for before. Delaney Walker did not practice Wednesday because of a knee. That's also new for him. Mike Williams did not practice Wednesday because of his back. That one has me worried because Mike Williams missed virtually all of his rookie season because of a back problem. So you want to pay attention there. And then we'll end on a positive note. Julian Edelman with a rib injury last week, back in practice, limited, but the fact that he was out there Wednesday, I think bodes very well for him playing this week.
All right, lots of injury information there from Stephania. Of course, we'll have as much information as possible during Friday's show when we are previewing every game.
He's a brainiac, he's my clay.
Time now for one of the best segments of the week. Cornerback wide receiver matchups of note. We start with the guys, as in wide receivers, that have a good matchup this week. Mike, and we begin Monday Night Football, Cincinnati against Pittsburgh, right here on ESPN.
All right, let's do it. As usual, we're going to pick on the Steelers slot man, Mike Hilton here, because the Steelers year after year continue to get picked on at this spot. So far, the Steelers struggling altogether, actually, against wide receivers. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. They've given up the 7th most fantasy points to receivers, but they've given up the most to the slot, the 4th fewest to the perimeter. So that really tells you how much guys lined up on the interior are really beating them up. In fact, the Steelers have allowed 530 yards to players aligned in the slot this season. That is 88 yards more than any other team in the league. They were also dead last in this category in 2018, so this has been a consistent problem for this team. Just think about Philip Dorsett, Julian Edelman, Tyler Lockett, Josh Gordon have all reached 73 yards against Pittsburgh this season in just 3 games. Most of those yards came out of the slot. Mike Hilton has been picked on a ton. He's been targeted on 33% of his coverage snaps so far this season. And we've already seen Boyd have some success against the Steelers. 1 game against them last year, 7 catches, 62 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 9 targets in those games. And Boyd, even without a good matchup, already a good play. 11 targets per game this season, averaging 83 yards per game as well. I think that's his number, right? 83?
83
right
is his number. And Mike, I'm glad you mentioned his number because something has been stumping me for quite some time.
Oh,
and
yes.
I want to make this very clear. This was not my idea originally. My good buddy Pete Blackburn, who writes for CBS Sports, hilarious on Twitter, a good friend of mine. We're from a close, near, adjacent town, so we hang out a good amount back home. He posed this question on Twitter at Pete Blackburn a while back, and it's been stumping me for a while. So I want to open it up to the masses. What wide receiver in the NFL that wears, or which wide receiver that wears a number in the 80s is the best in the NFL? Who is the best NFL wide receiver to wear a number in the 80s?
Right now, currently.
Right now. We're not talking Randy Moss back in the day or Jerry Rice, etc. We are talking amongst active wide receivers, which is the best that wears a jersey number in the 80s. We're going to have Kyle put it up on the poll, or Jackson, whoever handles that now. Candidates include Tyler Boyd, Sterling Shepard. Who was the third we decided?
Jarvis Landry?
Landry, who wears 80 for the Browns.
And then we're going to do a fill-in section where it's like other, and then we want you to fill in like who you think it would be.
You can click other, vote, and then you can also reply. But like if you have a better answer, it is trust me, think about it for a while. You'll be surprised by how few elite wide receivers, if any, wear a number in the 80s. All right, so we talked about Terry McLaurin yesterday, Mike, who also does not wear a number in the 80s, but his teammate that does not. What is Paul Richardson wearing now?
I don't know.
He was wearing 10 in Seattle.
I can't believe that you guys
I don't know anything about numbers.
He's
17?
Hold on. Did you just say you don't know anything about numbers, Mike?
No. I know nothing. I know literally nothing.
That needs to be a drop. Why are you even on this show if you don't know anything about numbers?
Nothing.
That needs to be a drop.
About what are numbers?
That's the best part of this conversation right now.
P. Rich was 10 in Seattle. He's still 10 in Washington. Also not number in the 80s. Mike, Paul Richardson, who had a nice game last week, 8 catches plus touchdown, has a nice matchup, you're saying, against the Giants?
He sure does. The Giants have been picked on early and often this season, and Richardson's been okay himself. He's actually 24th at wide receiver in receptions right now with 15. He has 2 touchdowns, 2 end zone targets, so he's getting some work near the goal line, and he was a top 10 fantasy receiver last week in that game against Chicago, which, I mean, they have good perimeter corners, and he kind of came through. Nonetheless, a great matchup you mentioned McLaurin. Same thing here for Paul Richardson. Janoris Jenkins is one of the perimeter corners there. He has struggled. He's been targeted on almost 30% of his coverage snaps, which is extremely high. And the rookie DeAndre Baker is on the other side. Altogether, the Giants' second most fantasy points allowed to wide receivers so far, the most to perimeter receivers, which again, that's where you have Richardson. That's where you have McLaurin with Trey Quinn, of course, in the slot. Giants, 6 touchdowns already allowed to receivers as well. That is third most. So like these guys, upgrading them on the outside. Trey Quinn, actually, he gets Grant Haley in the slot, so he's a sneaky play as well. Very cheap in DFS, so keep an eye on him too.
Speaking of DFS.
Yes. Do you know?
I'm making a segue.
I was going to say, Stephania just jumping right in. Congratulations to our friends from DraftKings, who are now the official daily fantasy partner of the NFL. Daniel, why don't you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, let me ask you, Field, is there anything, and you just got married, correct?
I did, yes. It was awesome.
So is there anything better than watching football?
Other than marriage, no.
Okay. I mean, I didn't think there was, but of course there is.
There is? What?
It's watching football with a DraftKings lineup on the line.
Are you serious?
Especially this week. Yes, Field. I am very serious. DraftKings, the leader in one-day fantasy football, is giving new users a free shot at over $1 million in prizes with your first deposit when you sign up at DraftKings.com/FFF. Draft your lineup and feel the sweat like never before. Every run, throw, and catch mean more with the DraftKings lineup on the line. It's simple. Just draft your lineup, stand to the salary cap, and see how your team stacks up against the competition. Plus, all new and existing users can get a deposit bonus up to $500. That's some extra cash to play with this football season. Nothing adds to the sweat of watching a game quite like having a shot at over $1 million in prizes. Head to DraftKings.com/FFF right now. For a limited time, all new and existing users can get a deposit bonus up to $500. Plus, new users will get a free shot at over $1 million in prizes with your first deposit. That's DraftKings.com/FFF for all new and existing users to claim your special offer. Only at DraftKings. A minimum $5 deposit required. Deposit bonus requires 25 times played through. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details. And if you need help setting a DraftKings lineup, Mike Clay and Al Zeidenfeld and myself do a DFS podcast where we focus specifically on DraftKings prices here for Fantasy Focus. It's going to publish after this podcast today.
A little bit of Thursday. I love that. Thursday action on the DFS front. And also, if you play DFS, what you're going to want to do is avoid wide receivers in bad cornerback matchups, which brings us right back to Mike Clay 2.0. John Brown of the Bills host the Patriots on Sunday. I have been saying that this is the game of the week. I can't wait to watch this one on Sunday in Buffalo. But if you have John Brown, might be a good week to fade.
Yeah, no doubt. I've been doing projections and NFL analysis for a long time, about a decade. I don't know if I could remember a team through 3 weeks having yet to allow a touchdown, a defense having yet to allow a touchdown. The Patriots have not allowed a touchdown. I know the schedule's been light, but that doesn't matter. Like, that's an incredible thing, an incredible feat for sure. So obviously that's step one here. They don't allow many points. That's a problem for the Bills offense, but it has translated to wide receivers as well. The Patriots have been terrific in this department. Second fewest fantasy points to receivers overall, fewest to perimeter receivers, fewest to wide receivers lined on the perimeter to the left, third fewest to the slot. John Brown lines up all over the field, and the Patriots shut down the entire field. So it's a problem for sure. On top of that, I think there's a very good chance he gets shadowed by Stefon Gilmore this week, who is one of the best corners, maybe the best corner in the NFL right now. He shadowed Juju Smith-Schuster in week 1, held him to 6 catches, 78 yards in that game, no touchdowns. Robbie Anderson held to 3 catches for 11 yards and no touchdowns in week 2, and he helped against Devontae Parker and Preston Williams last week. Parker actually didn't have a catch in that game. He has been terrific. I know Brown is seeing a huge target share, almost a quarter of the targets, but this is a tough matchup, and I think it's to the point where you think about benching him. As good as he's been, he's coming off kind of a down week last week. I think there's a good chance he should be on benches here.
Yeah, one of the things I'd say about that too, Mike, is not a lot of people drafted John Brown to be a starter, right? Yeah. Many people drafted him as a depth level play as it is. So I don't think there's a lot of harm in benching John Brown based off what I imagine your roster construction will be. That game, again, 1 o'clock on Sunday, should be hotly contested between two teams that figure to be in the playoff mix. Obviously, the Patriots will be. The Bills could cement their status there with a win on Sunday. All right, Adam Thielen and Stefon Diggs have had very disparate starts to the season. Thielen's been awesome. He lives in the end zone. Stefon Diggs has been, well, not so good. Low volume, and they've got a really tough matchup this weekend against the Bears on Sunday, Mike.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Thielen's playing well, but he's been underwhelming in fantasy because there's not enough volume in this offense. And Stefon Diggs is, of course, he's been hurt by the low volume offense as well. Really disappointing so far this season, as you mentioned. But here's where it gets tricky, right? You're playing the Bears defense. They're really good. Kyle Fuller's really good. Prince Amukamara is really good on the perimeter. That's where Thielen and Diggs primarily align. So it's a tough matchup. But then you look at past production by these guys against the Bears. And last season, Adam Thielen, 10 catches, 104 yards, and 0 touchdowns on 16 targets in 2 games against the Bears. They shut him down. And think about how good he was. That's bad production for him. And it's not just last year. He has never cleared 68 yards in a game in 9 games against the Bears. He's never scored a touchdown, or actually he hasn't scored a touchdown against them since 2014. They have had his number for sure. Then you look at Stefon Diggs. He's been great against the Bears somehow. 7 touchdowns in 7 career games against the Bears, including 21 catches, 173 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 28 targets against them in 2 games last season. So it's a tough one for sure. I mean, Prince Amukamara is playing outstanding football so far. The side of the field he plays on Chicago has allowed the fewest fantasy points to that slot so far. We know Kyle Fuller's good. I mean, it's tricky. You know, you don't want to ignore the pass production of a player like Diggs against them.
Yeah.
Is maybe just sometimes corners and receivers match up certain ways, and he can get by these guys easier than Thielen can and others can. But we know the Bears defense is good, and we know this is a low-volume Vikings offense, so it's a tough one for sure.
Very tricky right there. So tricky that I'm not even going to ask a question. I'm going to instead have Daniel ask a question because
Mike,
I'm so confused.
I just want to know, what do you have Stefon Diggs' projection as? Because I released Stefon Diggs earlier this week.
Very good point. That's an excellent point.
I have him at 22 catches, 300 yards,
fair.
4 touchdowns. No,
he really has been released. Wow.
Yeah, let's see. I can't find him right now. Here he is. 4 catches, 50 yards, and about a 20% chance of a touchdown. So
that would
he
be
comes
like,
in.
11 points?
11 points right in the money. You're good at math. 45th in the projections.
I say Stefon Diggs will score more than 11 points tonight against the Chicago Bears Sunday with a sushi dinner on the line.
Wow, now we're ramping the bets up. Is this an all-you-can-eat sushi house dinner?
This is an all-you-can-eat sushi house dinner.
Wow!
I am
okay,
in.
Finally. No, that's not how it works. You have to say,
I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm getting there.
Come on. Move this along.
I say Stefon Diggs scores fewer or equal to 11 fantasy points this week against the Bears.
Oh my God.
Put it on the board.
Put it on the board.
Hold on. Can we get production for a second?
Can we redo this? Because it's embarrassing. You can't leave that.
Honestly,
as the way
does
that
Mike
goes.
have any self-respect? Answer me this question. Mike put together the worst bet regarding the Packers. You bet Kyle a $3 bowling alley opportunity. You can't even make a board bet. Mike, you are one of the, I say this all the time, there may not be a better, more insightful fantasy mind than you in the world.
Okay, you can stop talking.
No. But
there's a but.
Can we work on your mechanics with these board bets?
What did I do? Where did I go wrong?
We stared at each other like you were like
I was waiting
Rose and Leo on the Titanic, and it was like a fading away into obscurity. You were like,
and then you were like, you couldn't do it's like the fewer than or equal to.
I was waiting for Daniel. I was watching his mouth.
Yeah.
So we can line it up.
Okay. Can we?
What, can I not watch your mouth? Okay. Is that weird?
No, and then you said line it up. Just stop talking. Do it again.
Just watching your beard?
Daniel.
I think Stefon Diggs will have more than 11 points against Chicago Bears this week.
I think Stefon Diggs will have fewer or equal to 11 points against the Chicago Bears this week. Put it on the board.
Okay.
Put it on the board.
That was like a B+.
That was bet. You know what?
Thank you, guys.
In my mind, that was like that was incredible.
To a B+.
That was an A+ for me.
It's not good.
That was like the Dolphins scoring 30 points this week and still losing. I'm in on it.
Yeah, and still losing.
Yeah.
Being the operative.
Good job, guys. Good job. I'm proud of you. Anyways, Stephania's going to tell us about ZipRecruiter.
Maybe we can get off this awful board betting situation. Making board bets with Mike Play can be a slow process, but hiring can also be a slow process.
Well done. That was good.
True.
Cafe Altura's COO Dylan Miskowitz needed to have a director of coffee for his organic coffee company, but he was having trouble finding qualified applicants. So he switched to ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you, it finds them for you. Its technology identifies people with the right experience and invites them to apply to your job, so you get qualified candidates fast. Dylan posted his job on ZipRecruiter and said he was impressed by how quickly he had great candidates apply. He also used ZipRecruiter's candidate rating feature to filter his applicants so he could focus on the most relevant ones. And that's how Dylan found his new director of coffee in just a few days. With results like that, it's no wonder 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. See why ZipRecruiter is effective for business of all sizes. Try ZipRecruiter for free at our web address, ZipRecruiter.com/06010. That's ZipRecruiter.com/06010. ZipRecruiter.com/06010. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
Good stuff
He's
there.
thirsty, Kyle.
Well done right there. Time now for a game preview, unless there's something else that I missed along the way.
No, it's just because it's Kyle's team. We're going to start with them. I thought I would play Kyle's
gotcha.
team.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Time now for a game preview between the Packers and the Eagles. The Packers are at home for this game. They are also a 4-point favorite. Aaron Rodgers has had some tough sledding out of the gates. 3 straight difficult opponents to begin the season. And that means, or that has contributed to him being quarterback 21 so far this season. We all have him, though, as a top 10 play. Stefan, you have him all the way up at number 7, lead amongst the three of us in his rankings.
I do. Look, I mean, look, I've got him. I am confident. Look, Aaron Rodgers got to get the ball rolling. Philadelphia has not really impressed on defense. Am I right? Or am I right, Mike Clay?
You are correct.
Right.
That'd be correct,
I really think that they're going to get the touchdown thing going. You know, Aaron Rodgers plays really well when he's a chip on his shoulder, and I don't think he's really happy with the way the offense is produced. So I am seeing a touchdown-heavy game. We have Davante Adams coming up in this. I think it's a big Davante Adams game. And I don't think he's the only one who gets in the end zone, but I think this is a big passing game.
Yeah, this is, I think tonight is sort of a, not a litmus test for Aaron Rodgers, because Aaron Rodgers is incredible, future first ballot Hall of Famer, but this is the opportunity for us to see whether or not Aaron Rodgers can become uncorked, because it's a very good spot for him, right? Playing against the Eagles, who are incredibly banged up in the secondary. Yep. They've got some injuries amongst their front 7 players as well. The Packers playing at home on a short week, which I know that both teams are playing on a short week, but it is easier to play at home than it is to have to travel on Wednesday with just 2 days of preparation. All of those factors tend to favor the home team. The secondary for the Eagles is a weakness. The Packers wide receiver group is not necessarily a strength other than Davante Adams, but it's good enough. Tonight is a good opportunity to see if Aaron Rodgers will deliver on the returns that you hope for when you may have made him the 3rd or 4th, maybe even the 2nd highest drafted quarterback in your draft. His running back, Aaron Jones, might be in a good spot as well, Mike. Now, yes, in the sense that the Packers, we think, can move the ball through the air and perhaps score touchdowns, but no in the sense that the Eagles have been very good against the run so far this year. What's your confidence level in Aaron Jones in this matchup against Philly?
Yeah, it's tricky for sure, especially after last week when Jamal Williams actually played 32 snaps to Aaron Jones' 20, right? Yeah. So that should give you a little bit of pause. But I think Aaron Jones is still the best back here. His efficiency has been down from past years, which is a concern. 3.8 yards per carry, 1.4 after contact, kind of bailing you out with 3 touchdowns so far, including 2 last week. But again, we want to see better play. And a big problem here is, as you mentioned, the Eagles' run defense. Their pass defense has struggled. Their run defense is outstanding. Only 53 carries for 167 yards and a touchdown allowed to running backs in 3 games so far. All are among the best in the league. In fact, running backs averaging 3.2 yards per carry against, and that is 3rd best. Look at what think about the number 1 back for the 3 teams they played so far. Darius Geis, Devonta Freeman, Kerryon Johnson. Combined, 41 carries, 76 yards.
It's been ridiculous.
1.85 yards per carry. Just terrific. And by the way, they've been top 5 the Eagles have in rushing yards allowed each of the past 2 years, so this is nothing new.
Yeah, Davante Adams, we think it's back on track tonight, though. We have some confidence, or maybe not some confidence. We have some concerns about Aaron Jones. No such concerns about Davante Adams. We all have him as a top 6 play, although it's fair to note he's wide receiver 47 so far this season.
He hasn't scored.
Hasn't scored a touchdown.
That's why him and Aaron Rodgers, I think this is going to be the 2 of them get on track.
This feels like it's bound to change tonight. We have plenty of confidence. But, Mike, just to reiterate, I mentioned how the Eagles secondary is banged up, but just who do you expect to face off against Davante Adams tonight?
Rasul Douglas will be one of them, and Sidney Jones will be the other, because, of course, Jalen Mills is already out. Not that he was a major asset anyway, and, of course, Ronald Darby's out as well. So it's a disaster right now for the Eagles for sure. And listen, they struggled in the secondary with Darby for half the year and Mills last year. They gave up a ton of production to receivers. That has been the case again this year, including 6 touchdowns allowed to receivers. It's been rough. Think about this. Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Terry McLaurin, Marvin Jones all have reached 22 fantasy points against the Eagles already, and that's just in 3 games. By the way, one quick note on Adams. The Packers have faced the Bears, the Broncos, and the Vikings so far.
Right.
I mean, if you're going to have a bad stretch.
Chris Harris.
Yeah, Chris Harris shadowed Adams, of course, and Chicago's perimeter corners we talked about earlier. I mean, that's tough. And his target share has only dropped from 30% to 26%. I do think he'll get back on track, especially against the secondary. He just started out with a really, really tough schedule.
Plus, it's worth noting both the Packers running backs are a bit banged up. I mean, they're going to play. They practiced yesterday, which was really the only day that the Packers had to practice. But Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, shoulder and neck issues for these guys. I don't think the run game is huge this week. I think this is a big passing game. Like you said.
Keep an eye on those running back injuries, although no concerns going into the game. Kyle, it's your team. It's also your opportunity to give us the IBM Watson insight of the week surrounding Marquez Valdes-Scantling.
Yeah, appreciate that, Field. You got a 12.8 point projection from IBM Watson this week. He went for 18.9 last week. IBM Watson gives him a 15% chance to boom and go over 19.5 points in this spot tonight, but also gives him a 19% chance to bust and go under 9.5 points. Which do you guys think is more likely?
I think he's more likely to boom.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. I mean, this guy has really taken a step forward in his second season. He's been on the field for 86% of their pass plays. He's handling a 25% target share. There are number one receivers that aren't getting 25% target shares, 6+ targets in all 3 games. And by the way, I kind of touched on this a little earlier, but the Eagles have faced 6 perimeter receivers so far, 2 starting perimeter receivers, right? 3 games, 2 on each team. They've faced 6. I'm doing the
checks
math.
out, yeah.
5 of them have caught at least 4 passes. 4 of them have caught at least 5 passes. I mean, they give up production to that. We've talked about the cornerback problems. They give up production to these outside guys. Of course, MVS and Davante Adams are the outside receivers for the Packers with Geronimo Allison in the slot. He is set up for a big game.
You know, so Mike is being, we're going to take a quick break in a second, but Mike, what a pro Mike is, talking about his team honestly and candidly and having to admit that the Eagles have a roster weakness right now, at least until they get healthy. That right there, Mike, is why you're one of the best in the business, even if you can't make a board bet for your life. We're going to discuss the Packers. No, just kidding. The Eagles and the offensive side of the Eagles in just a moment. But first, a quick fantasy show clip.
I always strive to learn new things and expand my horizons as a human being. And there are 2 things I recently learned that I want to share with you. Thing 1, did you know there's something called defense in football? Crazy, right? Thing number 2, the 2019 Denver Broncos are the first defense since the AFL-NFL merger in 1970 to fail to record a sack or takeaway through the first 3 weeks of the season. That is not great. But in fairness, I guess that's one of the things that comes with hiring a young offensive mastermind to coach your team. All right, back to this defense concept. Look, if you're like many fantasy managers, you stream defense week to week, and quite frankly, you don't put a lot of thought into the defense you throw into your lineup any week. That's okay. You don't have to think about it because I'm going to tell you the best streaming options at defense for week number 4. All of these defenses available in more than 50% of ESPN leagues. Let's start with those Broncos, who, despite not having a sack or a takeaway in their first 3 games, are actually in a good spot this week against a rookie quarterback and a Jaguars team that ranks in the bottom 10 of the league in terms of yards per game. Also like the Colts defense this week against the Raiders. With Darius Leonard likely back, I like Indy's chances to get after Derek Carr. Remember, Carr has been sacked 7 times in the last 2 weeks alone, while Oakland has combined for just 24 points in that span. And finally, how about the Seahawks on the road at Arizona? The Cardinals have allowed over 5 sacks per game this year. Seahawks are definitely capable of getting after their quarterback. Remember, they had 5 sacks in week 1 against the Bengals.
Game preview. Keep it rolling with the other side of the game preview. The Eagles go to Green Bay, as we have been discussing, and Carson Wentz, sort of an interesting spot for Wentz this season. He's kind of the inverse of Rodgers. He's been really good so far. Quarterback 7 through 3 games, but a difficult matchup, at least especially compared to Aaron Rodgers, who has a better forecast against the Eagles. Carson Wentz goes against this Packers defense that has really good talent in the secondary. They've got a really good front 7 that has been catalyzed by the Smiths, Zadarius, and Preston, though we should note that Zadarius Smith is questionable for this game after being added to the injury report, I believe on Tuesday it was. But if you have Carson Wentz, Mike, he feels like one of the most intriguing plays of the week because there's some good streaming options. Would you start or sit Carson Wentz?
I'm going to sit him. I'm at QB 14. It's kind of interesting. Wentz's weekly finishes so far are 8th, 11th, and 9th, and we are all 12th or lower on him this week. And the matchup's really the key here. The Packers, the second fewest fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks so far. Only 60 completions, 671 yards, and 1 touchdown allowed. All are among the 5 best defenses in the NFL. So it's tough. I know Wentz has played well. He has 7 total touchdowns in 3 games. You like that. And actually, he already has 10.1 fantasy points with his legs. He totaled 9.3 last year. So you like that a little bit. Maybe that raises his floor, but still the matchup here on the road is really tough.
I just think it's hard to have a game where you do everything. But I will say this. Carson Wentz, to me, when I've seen him, especially just, even as this season has gone along. There's only 3 games, but the way he's running. Obviously, so he's getting the points with his legs, but it's even just like his escapability. There was a move that he made where last year would have been a sack with 100%, and he ducked out, spun around, and made a play out of it. Like, he looks so much better, and just to the eyeball test, just reinforcing that these guys who come off a major injury one year, even if they're back and they're fully playing, you could see a huge difference in the quality of their play and the effectiveness of their play.
I mentioned that there's some good streaming options this week, and I think that's worth reiterating because if you have some concerns about a quarterback against a good defense without one of his top wide receivers on a short week, you've got guys like Matthew Stafford against Kansas City, Daniel Jones against the Redskins, even Case Keenum against the Giants in that same game. That I think there's some merit to benching Carson Wentz for a streaming option that is not simply dependent upon the outlook for Carson Wentz, but the good outlooks for other quarterbacks that are most likely going to be available to you. His running back of choice is hard to say week to week because the Eagles have been relying upon Miles Sanders, Jordan Howard, Darren Sproles. I'll just say this. Until proven otherwise, I don't want to play any Eagles running back. I just don't. There's been too much of an even split. Last week it was 24 snaps, and 23 snaps amongst Darren Sproles, Jordan Howard, and Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders is the most explosive player. He's also, and I've said this like 13 times now on the podcast, still returning kickoffs. If you're returning kickoffs, you likely are not going to be handling 20 or 25 touches in a given game. Darren Sproles takes away some of the passing game value, and for Jordan Howard, you have to count on touchdowns to be there. We have Miles Sanders ranked the highest amongst the 3, but again, do either of you have any interest in starting a Eagles running back this week?
Nope.
Yeah, I don't think I want to start him in season long, but if I'm in a DFS tournament, I might be interested. I'll tell you why. He's coming off, despite terrible efficiency as a runner so far, he's coming off his best game, 126 yards against the Lions. And the Packers defense is getting crushed by running backs so far.
Interesting.
Crushed. No better than 7th in carries, rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, yards per carry, carries inside the 5, targets, receptions, and receiving yards allowed to running backs. They are near the top in all of those categories, 3rd most fantasy points allowed to running backs. In fact, Philip Lindsay last week and Dalvin Cook earlier this season both reached 28 fantasy points against him. So perhaps Sanders gets over the hump in this game.
Right.
It is possible.
Right. I think I guess the point is to what Mike is just saying is that we don't one of them could have a great game. The Eagles, though, rarely rely on just one running back in the course of a game. And, for all you just said, who knows? Jordan Howard could punch in 3 short touchdowns, right? Who knows?
Yep.
Miles Sanders has the most complete skill set amongst these 3 backs, which is why he probably has the best chance to boom. Deshaun Jackson, we know, is out, but Stephania, Alshon Jeffery, not even on the injury report. Do you have any concerns, though?
I do.
Interesting.
Because the Eagles have not practiced one day this week. And I think when people say, he's off the injury report, he's listed as a full participant, but keep in mind, we're not practicing. This team is so banged up, they canceled the practice last week. They did not practice at all. Of course, they're doing,
they're working.
Walk-through thing, mental reps. They're doing some things, but they are not conducting formal practice. And the reason that matters with Alshon Jeffery is he had a calf injury. We saw him come into last week's game as questionable. I told you I thought that was more hopeful than really optimistic because last week he did not practice once. So consider the fact that Alshon Jeffery has not practiced since he left the field with a calf injury. And while he might be doing so much better, the challenge with calf injuries is you never really test them until you're fully explosive. Now, he may have been out and running for the team. I'm sure that he's been doing work that has them feeling good enough to let him play, but he hasn't been in a football game. These things can recur. So I'm definitely nervous, and I will be very intrigued to see how he looks in this game.
Well, Mike, not only is he coming off of an injury, but he might have an incredibly difficult matchup on Thursday.
Yeah, you may have noticed Emmanuel Sanders was pretty quiet in week 3.
Yeah,
pretty
fantasy
much,
points.
Yeah, did nothing. Well, he was shadowed by J.R. Alexander, who was an early round pick last year, missed a lot of time with injury, but he was showing signs last year as a rookie that he was going to be one of the better corners in the league, and it's showing this year as well. He's been outstanding. He shut down Emmanuel Sanders, and there's a chance, actually a good chance, I think, that he travels with Alshon Jeffery in this game because right now you're just not really afraid of Mac Hollins or J.J. Arcega-Whiteside on the other side. You're more afraid of Jeffery. I think there's a chance he shadows him, and look, Jeffrey, maybe he's a guy you try to trade for in fantasy after this week because I'm just kind of complaining now because I feel like everyone just loves to hate on Jeffrey. I don't want to deal with him. Injuries, this, underperforming. But here's the thing. Hold on.
When you say loves to hate on, it's not coming out of the ether. I mean, this guy has given people reason to wonder because he hasn't been consistent except for that 1 year with your Eagles where he
not
had
one year,
an amazing year.
but not 1 year. His first year with the Eagles, he was wide receiver 21 in PPR. Last year, when he came back from the injury in week 4, he was wide receiver 17 the rest of the way. So I just think he's underrated. It's just an aside.
The part show, I've got a very difficult decision that actually includes a team that I play with, Chapin. We play together, which
don't
decide if it's a good idea. DeMarcus Robinson and Alshon Jeffery is our flex considerations that I drop a pen on myself. Alshon Jeffery, I know Stephania just said he hasn't played, but I also remember last year coming off of that injury. First game back, he went crazy. He had an awesome game in his season debut in 2018. But I'm taking
it's
the
totally
injury
different.
into
It wasn't his
consideration. I'm taking the difficult matchup into consideration. I'm taking the short week. And I think I'm leaning towards DeMarcus Robinson. By the way, we have Alshon Jeffery, for those who are not watching it on the stream, all ranked right around wide receiver 40 this week. But maybe a little bit more optimism, at least for one of us, the smart one, on Nelson Agholor. But Mike, you tell me why you're smart and I'm dumb, and you've got Nelson Agholor ranked at wide receiver 40 this week.
You're hating on Nelson Agholor. Why do you hate Nelson Agholor?
Well, listen, he's going to be on a new team next year.
You've got him at 37, so you're not.
I know, but I'm not the one who's the passionate.
Well, I'll tell you why.
Mike
I will
despises him. You hate him.
Yeah.
I will tell you why. 24
some dropsies.
He definitely does have those. There were no lights. It was the ball was in the lights. 24 targets over the past 2 games, and but he was the number 1 receiver. Alshon Jeffery's back. Even if he is shadowed, he's still their number 1 receiver now. You would expect the target volume to come down. And the biggest key here for me, the main reason I'm lower on him, is the Packers' defense. I mean, they've only allowed 24 receptions to wide receivers this season. That's fewest in the league. They've allowed the fewest fantasy points to slot receivers. Agholor, of course, aligns inside 85% of the time. And Tramon Williams, what is he, 47 now?
Yeah.
I mean, the guy continues to dominate year after year. They put him at safety. They put him at corner, outside. They have him shadow at times last year. He shuts down whoever he plays against. He is their current slot corner. And look at the slot receiver production against the Packers so far. You remember Chad Beebe had the 61-yard catch? Well, Anthony Miller and Deshaun Hamilton combined for 1 target and 0 catches on 56 routes. They've just owned that position.
I'm more optimistic. I'm more optimistic in Nelson Agholor, a better player than any of the 3 that you've listed so far to this point.
That's fair.
At least at this juncture of his career. Beyond that.
I mean, and I would say, here's the other thing. I want to give Nelson Agholor some props because I'm not really hating on him because everybody saw on the social media
his tweet.
the guy who said, made fun of him as he was rescuing babies and being heroic. And then Nelson Agholor invited him and his family to the
fantasy karma, Stephania.
I know.
Fantasy karma.
Is that an analytic? Is that a next-gen stat?
That's a next-gen statistic for you right there. That tweet alone is worth 10 fantasy
He's
points
wonderful.
tonight.
He's a wonderful person for doing that. And I thought he totally took the high road, showed a lot of class. And I am rooting for Nelson Agholor, but I just don't think he's going to have a great game.
All right. So here's the thing. There are a lot of signs pointing towards the Packers in a lot of ways. And I'm having a hard time. The Eagles, the 1-2 battle-tested Eagles, who, if they lose on Sunday, there is a chance they're 3 full games out in the division, in a division that they may have to win because the NFC is deep and there could be other wild cards that could emerge from the NFC North, where Minnesota and Chicago and Green Bay and the undefeated Detroit Lions are all in the mix.
Knew that was
the Seahawks are going to be there. Who knows what happens in the NFC South? My point is that you got to win your division to feel really good about your chances after 1 quarter of the season.
Seahawks. What about
and yet
49ers?
the Eagles feel like one of those teams that 49ers as well, obviously. Yes. I just don't want to count the Eagles out. So I think maybe they find a way to get it going tonight. Nelson Agholor has a bigger game. But let's pick this game. And I'm having a hard time here. I'm having a hard time.
I'm not. Green Bay at
Eagles,
home.
Packers. You're going Green Bay?
Green Bay at home.
Mike,
on
you tell
Thursday
us.
Night.
I think the Eagles will hang in there. I think they will cover, but you called me objective earlier. I'm going to go with the numbers here. My projections, the projections that power the fantasy game, if you add them all up, come to Packers 27, Eagles 24.
Daniel, what do you got?
I hope I'm wrong.
I'm gonna say fly Eagles fly here.
Daniel, I love
You're not biased at all.
What?
Nope.
Love it.
Not at all.
2 weeks ago, I picked against the Packers on Thursday Night Football. I picked the Bears.
Yep.
I regretted that one.
Yeah, you did.
I just told our friend Cliff, it's his birthday. He's one of the producers on Golic and Wingo. He's a huge Eagles fan. I told him I'm picking the Eagles.
You gonna follow through with that? Phil, be a man of your word.
You're damn right I am, Daniel. Let's go. Fly, Eagles, fly, baby. Eagles get it done. They go to 2-2.
By the way, Mike, just so you know, these two ignored your projections. Take that for what it's worth.
That's
They
okay.
went with
What are
the Eagles.
projections?
I hope I'm wrong. Listen, I
Despite
hope
your
I'm
terrible board
say,
bet, I went with
Come
your
on.
projection.
Numbers are just lines on a paper.
Right, that's right. Who's a real
right.
Eagles fan here? Me or Mike?
Not me, apparently.
Yeah, apparently not. Dollar Shave Club. They might be fans of the Eagles. When we talk about Dollar Shave Club, we can't stress enough the quality of their products. They've spent years developing, crafting, refining everything. They have everything you can use to look, feel, and even smell your best. You name it, they have it. No, seriously, just wait 1 second, you'll know what I'm talking about. And as amazing as their shave stuff is, Dollar Shave Club is way more than just razors. Get this. Dollar Shave Club has you covered head to toe. They have everything you need to shower, shave, style your hair, brush your teeth, and yes, even wipe your butt. What?
I do most of those things. I do most
That's
of them.
right. You can wipe your butt with Dollar Shave Club products. And Dollar Shave Club can keep you automatically stocked up on the products you use. You get what you want whenever you need it, whether that's once a month or a few times a year. You'll never have to waste time at a store wondering if what you're getting is any good. As a Dollar Shave Club member, you know what you're getting is the highest quality. And right now, you can put the quality of Dollar Shave Club's products to the test. Their Ultimate Shave Starter Set has basically everything you need for an amazing shave. Executive razor, shave butter, prep scrub, and post-shave dew. The best part is you can try it for just $5. After that, the restock box ships regular-sized products at regular prices. Get your Ultimate Starter Set for just $5 at dollarshaveclub.com/FFF. At dollarshaveclub.com/FFF.
I like the way Field powered through that when I was sitting there going.
I know, Stephania.
I was like, Mike said I do most of those things. I just want to point. I just want to let
shave,
that.
that's all.
Oh,
his face just
Open
grows
for
this
interpretation.
weird
That's
round
right.
his
That's the
chin.
one.
His little lightly, you're just barely,
It just
a little bit of fuzz.
Doesn't grow.
Keith, let's bring it on home with a trio of questions from the social spots.
I'm definitely staying away from that.
as you should.
Tony wants to know, given the up and down nature of Jameis, along with the promise of Danny Dimes, Chris Godwin or Sterling Shepard rest of the season?
All right, a quick note. Chris Godwin missed practice yesterday.
Yep.
Hip issue. We'll find out more today. They go to Los Angeles, but the first practice of the week, he was not available. But for the full season, I'm still leaning Chris Godwin. Better player, I think, than Sterling Shepard. And loved what I saw from Daniel Dimes last week. Loved it.
Daniel Dimes. I like that. Is that the formal nickname?
That's a formal nickname, yes.
I like that.
His mother calls him Daniel Dimes.
Yeah, there's a...
but still,
one
game.
Our Jordan Renan did an article today where he kind of reluctantly has accepted that nickname.
Yeah,
Doesn't love it, but...
Listen,
okay.
F1 McLaren is here. We'll figure something out for young Daniel Dimes. I'll go with Chris Godwin.
I'm going with Godwin as well. 94% of the snaps so far, almost 90% of the pass routes, 22% target share. I know he's coming off a down week, but there's a lot to like, and they're not using O.J. Howard for some reason, so there's plenty to go around for Evans
They'll
and
get
Godwin.
that right.
I hope so.
Yeah, Chris Godwin. I think for all the reasons that you just said, I like Chris Godwin a ton coming into the season, and obviously we've been a little bit disappointed, but I think that turns itself around.
Keith, what next?
Yeah, Dustin wants to know who will have a better fantasy career, Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, or Daniel Jones?
Ooh, I go with Kyler Murray here.
Yeah.
The one that's got the chance to, I think, be as dynamic a player in the league as maybe we have. I understand that's saying a lot. Not Patrick Mahomes and probably not Lamar Jackson, but maybe in the same vicinity as Lamar Jackson. He's probably close to, if not every bit, the runner that Lamar Jackson is. We'll see if they end up using him that way. Right now, it's hard to make that case. But I'll go with Kyler Murray.
Yeah, yesterday we were asked the top 5 dynasty quarterbacks, and Murray was the only one in my top 5, so it has to be Murray. You're right. I think he has the chance to be a really good passer who can also run at a high level, which is just a hard thing to find. So I'm gonna go Murray.
Plus, once he hits his growth spurt, he's going to be really good.
He's going to be at least 6 feet tall.
He's going to be so good.
Yeah.
Why does that
Keith?
matter? It doesn't matter. Talk to Russell Wilson. Talk to Drew Brees.
I have talked to Russell. I've caught passes from Russell Wilson.
That's true. Didn't you? Yeah, that's right.
I caught a touchdown pass from Russell.
Yeah.
Name dropper. Kevin wants to know, in true show style here, am I whoa crazy
Yeah, that's
to
old
consider Darren Waller over George Kittle the rest of the season?
Yes.
I would say not this week. Kittle's on a bye.
Not this week. But
I think it's crazy.
I don't think Kittle. Obviously, this is a goal of Kyle Shanahan to spread the pass catches around, and he has openly said he didn't want Kittle to have to carry the load. He did it by default last year because they had virtually nobody else to throw to. The offense wasn't looking like it does now, but if you go back, I still go back to week 2 where it had or was it week 2?
Said two touchdowns already taken back
that were negated because of penalties, and Kittle's still going to be very involved. He's still got the breakaway speed. Like, I love Waller too. I actually love him. He's a frequent target. He may be more of a target share percentage within the Raiders offense.
It's not super crazy, but I still lean Kittle.
But I would go with Kittle.
Yeah, I have a number for you, Daniel. Okay?
Yep.
Last year, George Kittle, 27% target share. This year, 26%. Is that higher or lower?
That is 1% lower.
There you go.
And if there's anything I learned from yesterday's show, it is that
1%
number
matters.
is
makes a
1%
difference.
less.
It actually does not. It's pretty close. It's closer than you think, right?
Wait, it made a difference yesterday. Why does it not make a difference?
It
This
didn't.
is why
That
you
was
can't
the
trust
point.
numbers.
So you
Oh
weren't
my
listening.
gosh.
You were not listening. The point was it was pretty close. That was the idea. Pretty close. He's still a heavy, being heavily utilized in this offense. I think he'll be fine. Top 12 in fantasy points all 3 weeks, despite quote unquote disappointing. And by the way, Darren Waller has not been targeted while inside the 10 yet. You know, that offense is very good. They're not getting to the goal line. I'm still sticking with
Kittle. They can't get to
All right, one more brief question from
Last
Daniel.
question comes from Daniel. He wants to know if Field can make it through a Friday podcast without using the term litmus test because he's used it on 4 straight podcasts this week.
That's
wow,
you
that
know what?
sounds
That's
like it sounds like
that'll be a good litmus test for
barb
you
coming from
as an
producer.
analyst.
That sounds like a
I don't
barb.
think I can, Daniel.
Yeah.
Listen,
I don't think
And
you can
why
either.
should
I'll say
why
this.
shouldn't?
No, I'll say this in closing. I like when people tell me things that I say all the time because when you say them all the time, you're not aware of the fact that you're constantly saying things.
Yeah, I just
people
thought you
are
were
like,
a
oh, you
scientist."
always say litmus test, or you always say my question is this. I'm not aware of it. It's all subconscious. In the meantime, we're coming back on Friday to preview every game and brag about how the Eagles won tonight. And I'm the smart one. I'm the Eagles fan.
What?
Fly, Eagles, fly!
Let's go.
Go Pack, go.
If you need a stick of Tide, Field is your guy. If you're in Bristol or in Farmington, you should find another ride. Candidly, he hates Mike Clay, and you know that it's a fact. Every Yater's gonna Yate, 'cause he's on TV every day. A spicy tomato who's got the stats and tweets that'll make you laugh. He's our favorite host, and everybody knows his name.